Hello, everybody. I would like to thank you for joining into our live cast tonight on maintenance for endurance sports athletes. Tonight, I've got Cal Melton, Kim Ortloff, and Lori Paget joining in for our discussion. And I wanted to have them on specifically because an important thing for all endurance athletes is to have a team. We're often look at it as it's a very individualized sport, but a team of experts surrounding you is crucial not only for your overall health and overall fitness, but your longevity in sport. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, I want each of you to be able to do whatever sport it is, whether it's running, cycling, or any other endurance sport, as long as you possibly can and as long as you want to. So I'd like to give each of them just an opportunity to kind of introduce who they are, what they do, and how they might, or the expertise that they're going to provide us throughout the night, how it's pertinent to endurance sports. So Cal, would you go ahead and start us off?
Absolutely. Cal Melton. I'm a chiropractor in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm the 12th chiropractor in my family. I have a long history of working with athletes, and I've had the opportunity to work with several Olympians who have gone on to medal in different Olympic events.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cal. Kim, what about yourself? Kim, I think we might have you muted there. Oh, we might have lost. Oh, there we go. Lori, let's go on to you. We're having a little technical issues here with Kim.
Not a problem. Lori Paget, absolutely. Lori Paget, massage therapist, graduated North Carolina almost 15 years ago. Actually, it'll be 15 years this Friday. I've worked with professional football players, golfers, runners, endurance athletes across the board. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
Now, Kim, can we get you? There we go. Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Kim, are you there, hon? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? All right, well, we're going to go on. So the reason I had all three of these people on is they are three of the 5 key people that were actually part of my team that got me going after I had some nerve damage. So last year I had a little bit of nerve damage, and all 3 of these were part of my team to get me going back on the bike, back to running again, and I can actually feel my right hand again and am not in constant pain all the time. So wanted to start off here briefly with how maintenance is important, and for your standpoint, what do you find to be the most neglected area for endurance athletes? And I am going to have Lori. Would you start off from a massage therapist standpoint?
I would say definitely abdominal wall, legs, the area where the hip and the abdominal wall start to kind of come together. A lot of fibrotic issues through there, and I find that a lot of people have back issues with it, lower leg issues. It just can be a huge problem. So that is my number one answer. Yep.
Very good. And then Kim, can we get your feedback from this? You know, with what you do from a not only a little bit of a massage standpoint, but also the stretching aspect. You know, that was one of the things that for me was a new form of rehab that I never really integrated in, and definitely found some very big benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. So really, that's a great question, Brady. And a lot of what we see in the clinic, and especially what I see from a fascial mobility perspective, is an imbalance in tissue. So back to what Lori was talking about, a lot of abdominal core issues, but then the cross patterning and what's weak and what's not weak. So hamstrings are a huge issue with athletes. We see that all the time, and that's really just mainly an imbalance issue. So we go in and try to improve the mobility and try to get all the areas of the body to just meet itself on a balanced perspective. And we may incorporate Dr. Cal and get adjusted, and Lori with some deep tissue work as well, and try to get the body better balanced.
Okay. So Kim, since we've got some audio from here, can you just give a brief description on what it is exactly that you do?
Yeah, so I strap people down and bend them. That just in a nutshell. So I've got a history, a degree in exercise physiology and a massage therapy license, and I've worked with endurance athletes. I worked the Olympics in '96, Olympians, and a lot of professional athletes over the years. Very grateful. So in a nutshell, that's what I do, is just get them in, stretch them, bend them, and get them out.
Perfect. All right. Cal, let's take this question over to you. So what is it that you find the most neglected areas for the endurance athletes that's coming to you from a chiropractic standpoint?
Yeah, I feel like, the upper back and upper extremities. I think, those lower extremities talk to people enough that they usually will seek out care. I do find that people will let, mobility issues in their upper back, base of the shoulders, restrictions in their shoulders and forearms build. And unfortunately, when those reach a breaking point, it'll shut you down. The nerve pain can really cause weakness in the arms. The immobility can cause stress in the rotator cuff. And if anyone on here has had any tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, that can bring your training to a screeching halt.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Perfect. Okay. So with all of that being said, I'm guilty of it as always, as you can all attest to. For endurance athletes, we get so focused on the training and seeing improvements and seeing fitness gains that we often forget or neglect to have a maintenance routine. So from your perspectives, where would you say, or where would you suggest that endurance athletes add that maintenance routine into their daily life? And whether it's a part of what you do or something that you see that they could just directly add, even after a consult, that they could add to their routine, that you can say, okay, I'm seeing this, let's do this more consistently. Cal, what would you say there?
Mm-hmm.
I really think, having someone that you trust to evaluate the biomechanics, that's what a lot of this boils down to is realizing when joints are dysfunctional. So I think a lot of it starts with the individual and taking notice of during their performance when they're not performing well, when there's limitations. I think a lot comes from the coaches. Having a good coach as part of your maintenance routine that can actually identify when you have issues and point you to the right professional. You guys spend a lot of time. And to be honest with you, I think too, and this is a little outside the box, Brady, but, I think more people should add sports psychology. I really think, a lot of us providers, are also borderline, psychotherapists sometimes. And stress, not only the physical stress, but the mental stress can really affect a athlete's performance.
Yeah, agreed. Very much so. Kim, what would you say an endurance athlete needs to add to their maintenance routine?
I think Dr. Cal pretty much nailed it on the head insofar as the physical and mental aspects of all the training. I think, Brady, just a coaching, again, like Cal said, a coach knows the athlete better than anybody really, and can direct that athlete in the direction they need to go. We like to see athletes on a real regular basis, depending on what event they're trying to get prepared for, just
Right.
to prevent any hurdles we may have to jump that become big hurdles. So I think a maintenance program, more regular than not, is more sufficient. But again, you guys know them better, and pointing them in the right direction is key.
So really, no matter what it is, be preventative and be proactive instead of having to focus on it once it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we like to focus more on prehab versus rehab.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Used to their body. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Lori,
right,
anything-
exactly.
Well, I was
anything
going to
you'd like
say
add,
pretty
Lori?
much what Kim said is to prehab before rehab, but I would also say is to be patient. You have to be patient with the process. And a
That's
lot
hard.
of endurance athletes, you have type A personalities and you want instant results. And a lot of times it's just not possible.
Okay.
When you're going through that kind of training, your body is just exerting so much energy and force. And with, that kind of pressure, not only physically, but mentally, be patient. It's not going to happen overnight.
Okay. Perfect. All right. If you had one thing that you would like to see endurance athletes remove from their maintenance routines that they do, what would that be? Lori, do you have anything right now that you see that you want to go, let's not do that right now? whether it's because the science doesn't support it or it's not the best option, whatever it may be?
Well, a lot of times depends on where you're at. It's so subjective. It's so subjective. And I think depending on what resources you have around you, the team that you were able to put together, take out what doesn't work. If it works for you, great. Keep going in that direction. But if it doesn't, don't be hesitant to say, I've done this a few times and I'm just not seeing the improvements that were, feeling a little bit better or even way better than what I was before. Just take it out of your routine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cal, anything you would like to add to that?
As I thought about this, I just think athletes tend to sort of, grab a hold of tools that they can use at home, whether it be, Theraguns and, different devices for stretching and all those things. What I would say, because we have seen, it left to their own devices. Some athletes can take things to the extreme. I know that sounds silly, but
No.
I'm kidding, of course. But I think making sure that the self-care that you're doing is prescribed, and it's not just something that you read about out of a journal, out of a golfer's magazine or something like that, and you jump in wholeheartedly, and it may not be right for your body. So I think using your professional in home care is important.
Perfect. All right. Kim, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Something that could be removed from a maintenance routine that's not either the best option or it may not even be necessary?
Well, I would agree both with Lori and what Dr. Cal has suggested in answering that question. One of the biggest things I've seen is athletes, to Cal's point, at the at-home care tend to have the tendencies to beat the poo out of their tissue, thinking that's a good thing. And the way they train and the how hard they train beats the tissue up enough. So I think it's hard to deal with the mindset there that is very strict and driven to the fact that I need to roll hard or use a Theragun hard when I get home as recovery. So it's a tender issue. But I think to Cal's point, if they come in and we can get a good dialogue going on what's really going on, we can kind of help prescribe a better at-home methodology that will actually help recovery and help repair tissue rather than beat it up.
Well, and I think, Kim, that's a great, aspect or a great point to touch on as well, because so much of, whether it's a training session, an interval session, or even, more of a gym oriented athlete, a lot of people don't feel like they got their quote money's worth out of the workout if they don't get done feeling absolutely smoked. So, they take that same approach into their rehab or their recovery of, hey, this, pain is always a good thing. And you're exactly right. There are times where you don't want to hop on the rumble roller because it's only going to beat you up even more in comparison to what you just did over the last, 50 miles of riding or 15 miles of running. So that's a perfect addition there. I love that. Okay. So sports are already expensive enough, whether it's a bike, your constant repair of running shoes, race entry fees, whatever it may be for the athletes. Everybody is always constantly working on a budget. So if there was something or an area where you would recommend an athlete to spend their money for a recovery or a rehab standpoint, where would you recommend they put those dollars? And whether it may be go see a massage therapist, but if you're on a budget, do it at a minimum of this rate, or, this piece of equipment is a good piece of equipment when used in the proper fashion. Cal, what would you say there?
Two things. I would say, a coach. And no, Brady's not paying me to say anything.
I didn't pay him a word. He volunteered this.
It's so important. I mean, the coach is going to be the closest to you than, maybe even your spouse at times during this training. And they can recognize things and, notice your performance, and we can get out ahead of things. So I think having a good coach that you trust, that listens to you, that understands what you're going through, can determine if you're injured or if you're just sore. Those sort of distinctions are very important. And then I think having, whether it be a Lori or a Kim or a Cal or whoever, someone in the medical field that you trust that is willing to do the same, listen to you from a medical perspective and help guide your care, whether they're doing it directly or are referring you to another professional.
Perfect. Okay. And somebody that can take the time too. I think, that's an important part of that person you trust, is that they've got the time to and are willing and able to invest that in you. So that's great. Lori, what about yourself?
Cal took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say coach, because when you're training at that level, it's important to have somebody behind you who knows what they're doing. I would say do that over any piece of equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Kim, any additions for that? Let's be honest. You've put your body through some events over the years with Continental Divide and everything else. So not only have you seen it from a provider's standpoint, but also from an athlete standpoint. So you've got a little different perspective. What would you say there?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Brady. I would agree with all things that have been tabled thus far. And one thing I would add to that is, there are cryosaunas now around town where you can get a cheap and effective way for cold immersion for recovery. And if I'm going to go an extra mile outside of a coach and some stretching at home with some foam rolling or some chiropractic or massage care, I would be jumping in a cryosauna or an ice bath. And let's be real, you're more likely to show up and jump in a cryosauna than put ice in an ice tub.
Oh, yeah.
And I would jump in that. And I can say during my many grueling events where I've been dragging my tongue on the ground, I've sought out a cold creek or someplace to soak, just for recovery purposes more than anything else, and just to expedite that process.
Now, Kim, let me kind of expand on that a little bit and also ask a question of you with that. So from what I have read in terms of, ice baths and cryo, is it has its benefit from a reduction in inflammation, but there's also some research out there that shows you do not get the same training adaptations. Have you seen anything that supports or contradicts that as well?
I've seen more reports on that with the actual ice bath. So the studies I've read have showed that an actual cryosana infusion with liquid nitrogen is more effective post for better adaptations to training than an ice bath with ice. Now that's just I've not read a whole lot on that, but I have read studies showing a little bit of a difference there.
Okay, interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and also I think there is also, like anything else, moderation is key here. I think there's a point of no return if you're going to abuse any type of modality out there, whether it be ice, heat, even massage, anything. I think anything in moderation, and that goes back to the coach helping to moderate with the athlete, and then if also us as practitioners, it's up to us to help kind of moderate as well.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Anything any of you guys would like to add to that topic? Nope. Okay. Perfect. So now let's go the opposite end of the spectrum. We went from a budget. Now let's go no budget, no holds barred. What would your perfect recovery week for an athlete look like? Lori, let's start with you on this one.
If money was no object.
No object.
I even have a hard time with that one. I would make sure that you have the best team that you can assemble, number one, and just take advantage of what they can offer you, even if it is a little bit of criticism, if you're doing something too much. Again, back to what Kim was saying, where moderation is key. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So I would say that's the most important part. It's just to have the right people in your corner and take advantage of their knowledge.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Cal, anything? What would your perfect recovery process look like?
Perfect recovery process. Well,
no money, no limits whatsoever. You get to choose.
Well, I get done with my workout and I would go sit in some cryo. I would get a massage, see my chiropractor, make sure that my back mobility was good. I'd hop over on Kim's table and get stretched out on my tight hip flexors and glute muscles. And then I'd probably go home and eat a prepared meal with all the necessary ingredients for recovery, with anti-inflammatory, drink me a nice shake. And then I'd sleep in some amazing mattress, and that would be perfect.
Good answer.
All right. Very good. Okay,
Hey,
Kim, last but not least.
Can I sign up for that somewhere? Is there a sign
Yeah.
up sheet going around for this?
Cal's buying, apparently. So, yeah. Why
Yeah,
not?
well, hey, I'm all on it. So I totally agree with Cal. You know, that
Okay.
in a perfect world, that's a great recovery week, and all those things. Good food, good modalities, hydration, and sleep. I mean, sleep is key. That's something that is
Yeah.
underestimated.
Very
in our recovery
underestimated.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's the only time the body has.
Yep. And in our world of everybody wants to hustle and grind, it's
Yeah.
not always supported either. So, yeah, perfect. All right. Well, we've got one question that has come through here during our discussion, and I'm just going to touch on this here, or at least present it and see what you guys have. So the question is, a lot of times you will see people crossing the finish lines and immediately hopping on with a recovery tool. So whether it's a foam roller, your Normatec boots, whatever it may be, what is your perspective on that? Is that overkill? Is it something that is worth it? And is there a sweet spot from a timing standpoint to begin your recovery or your maintenance? Well, think of it kind of like the glycogen window that everybody talks about when you're looking at replenishing carbohydrates or glycogen into the muscle cells. Same kind of concept. What would you recommend? Cal, let's go to you.
I think hydration is important. I think if you're in a dehydrated state, it's probably not good to be too aggressive with the tissue right after the event.
Right.
Obviously, you hope that they know their bodies and are able to, temper what they're doing. But there is definitely a window. I mean, the inflammation process is going on during the event, will peak sometimes several hours afterwards. So if you can curve that window of increased inflammation, then you're winning. If you do things that increases it, then you're losing.
Okay. Got it. Kim, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here. I was really processing that question. I totally agree with Cal. I mean, first things first, hydration, and then give your body an opportunity to stay within that window of allowing it to come, hormones to settle and come down. And then one thing I should have mentioned earlier too, I think as far as a recovery process or part of a training recovery prehab, if you will, is getting in the water.
Yeah.
Whether it be water walking, water running, or just gentle sweating, you get that hydrostatic pressure, and that's a great way to get your recovery without producing more inflammation. So,
Wonderful.
Having access to a pool would be awesome to move around in. But yeah, I am with Cal in that, is within an hour window, just get in and do some light recovery or cool down.
Excellent. Okay. All right, Lori, anything you want to add to that?
I personally, I think that for most people, if you're doing a big run or something along those lines, I would actually encourage you to just take it easy the rest of the day, the evening, depending on when your race is, or if you've got some big event going on. I would wait until the next day to even try and foam roll or do anything, just because eating the resting part, like Kim was talking about, go to bed early, get up in the morning and start fresh. That's what I would say.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that's the last question that we have for tonight. So is there anything that you guys would like to add on in terms of what we've discussed that, whether it's a maintenance standpoint or recovery standpoint, that, even if it's some new research that you've seen, that you've come across that is something that might be the future of recovery or be beneficial moving forward for people? Kim, let's go ahead and go with you there.
That's a really tough question to answer, because working with professional athletes of all types, obviously they have time and money and resources to do all the right things. And what happens, what I've seen is you get the amateur or the endurance athletes who want to work just as hard as professional athletes, but then don't have the means because they
Right.
might be working full time. They might be a full-time dad. They may have all these other things, and they don't understand why they can't gain progress or they can't recover as fast. And I think there has to be a happy medium and a balance
Right.
in all your training efforts as far as your rehabilitative efforts. You know, stress is stress, cortisol is cortisol, adrenal fatigue is adrenal fatigue. And those come in many shapes, form, and sizes. And I think people, by and large, can be a little hard on themselves when external stresses really come in and creep in on the internal stresses. And I think people need to be fair to themselves in that regard. So something to always keep in your mindset when you're looking to figure out your training protocol, but more importantly, your recovery protocol. Because if you spend all this time recovering and then you go home and you have 5 screaming kids and a spouse pulling their hair out, guess what does that do?
Right.
It defeats the purpose of what you just did.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think
And
having
that's one of
balance.
those. Yeah, that's one of those things from a coach's perspective. I find a lot of times I'm holding people back from doing what they really want to do most of the time. You know, they have a 50, 60-hour work week that's out of the ordinary, or they're on their feet more throughout the week, or they've got a busy weekend planned, you know, chasing kids from game to game to game. You know, and not everybody can train like a pro athlete because they don't get to go home and kick their feet up and eat and hydrate. They have to, you know, they get off the bike and they immediately go to a soccer game for 2.5 hours, or, you know, they're chasing kids around. So that's a great perspective. Lori, anything you'd like to add?
The one thing that I would say is to eliminate sugar from your diet as much as possible. And while I know that is
Killing me.
extremely difficult, I know that it's extremely difficult. It just creates so much inflammation in your body, and it drags you down from a nutritional standpoint, from a psychological standpoint. Sugar really affects people, and I don't think that it's addressed enough.
Okay. And it's pushed in our society in general.
100%. I mean, it's in just about everything, you know, and it's hard to eliminate, but
Yeah, it is.
reduce as much as you can.
Okay. All right. Cal, what would you like to add to that?
I think, you know, I agree with both the other guests, Lori and Kim, and, you know, it's balance. It's balance in everything that you do. But if I had to pick 2 of my favorites, it's the sleep and it's the diet. And I'm really, really excited to see what we're going to see in terms of from the nutritional front over these next few years as genetic testing becomes more intrinsic to these athletes, and they use their genetics and what their body is to really develop training programs based on who they are from a DNA perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you're already seeing some of that, not even just from a DNA perspective, but from a you know, even a blood glucose perspective. You know, a lot of the pro athletes are using the Dexcoms now, and even the UCI has gone as far as banning them from the racing. So it's something is, you know, that was originally intended for medical use is now being utilized in sport. And it's clearly got an advantage. Otherwise, the UCI wouldn't be banning something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how the DNA testing does play into that over the next, you know, whether it's 5 or 15 years, whatever it may be. So that's great. Well, all right. Anything else you guys would like to touch on tonight, or is that it? Good to go?
Yeah, I think that, and I think Cal really finished that off nicely with the nutrition aspect of it, 100%.
Yep. Perfect. You've got to put the right fuel in the engine to make it run, right?
That's it.
Perfect.
That's right.
It's
All
a big part.
Well, I would like to just thank you guys so much for hopping on here tonight, taking the half hour out of your evening to join us and shed some light and some insight to the athletes that have hopped on here. For those of you that are watching, thank you so much for tuning in. All of these, will be posted on our Facebook feed as well as on our YouTube feed, so you can see them later on. But again, thank you all for tuning in. And to our guest speakers tonight, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your wisdom and for more than anything, getting me back on the road. So have a great night, guys.
Thank you, Brady.
Thanks, Brady. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Brady.
Yep.
Y'all
Likewise.
take care.
All right.
Y'all take care. Bye-bye.